Holy cow, it's been a minute, but the Sabres, for the first time in like a year that I'm talking to you, are on a win streak over the Hurricanes. We'll talk that. We'll talk Patrick Kane and new Sabres news that fans are going to love coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of the show brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. The Sabres win 3-2 shootout win over the Carolina Hurricanes. It is their first win streak of the entire season. They have not been on a win streak since that last couple of weeks last year, as Devin Levi showed up, almost willed them to the playoffs. They've not had a win streak since then. I'm at least using win streak to mean 3 games or more. Back-to-back wins twice in a row, not counting for this. So first streak of the year for the Sabres, and hopefully they string that together as they are about to play a brutal portion of their schedule. But we'll talk about the game, how the Sabres played. It was more than just the win. I thought they played extremely well, and one line has stolen my heart for the Sabres. Holy cow, this Peyton Krebs, Zach Benson, and Peterka line. I got some numbers on how impressive they have been in only a couple of games so far. Also, a little bit later in the show, I've seen this on social media a lot in the last 24 hours. So I want to dive in a little bit on Patrick Kane, who scored in overtime for Detroit last night in his return to Chicago. Crazy moment. He goes in on a breakaway. He scores against his former team. They give him a standing ovation as the game's number 1 star after, because it's his first time home. And the Blackhawks are out of everything anyway, so what do they care? So the Red Wings are now on a 5-game win streak. I want to talk a little bit about them, but more so the what-if game that I'm seeing a lot of what if Kane had signed with the Sabres, and revisiting my take on that and others' takes on, Kane and why, it was a risk, but it's paid off for the Red Wings. All of that coming up. You can join us on our subtext, our Locked On Sabres text line. To sign up, you go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. Couple of things that I noticed on the text line over the last couple of hours. This was a commentary on after the win last night. If they somehow win their next 2 and Tampa Bay loses both, I'd start scoreboard watching again and consider them buyers. That'd be 7 points out with 2 games in hand at the deadline. But if this team gets me to scoreboard watching again, I swear to God, I'll be so mad. That's from one listener. A little bit wondering about the deadline. I want to do a little bit more on that this week, of how close do they have to be to the playoffs by deadline time to start to think about maybe not even buying, but maybe more so not selling. That listener also went on to say that they play better against better teams, and they're on the road, Florida and Tampa this week, Tuesday and Thursday, the Sabres schedule. Both teams on the back-to-back when they get to Tampa, which means no Vasilevsky. Recall Levi. That will be interesting to what I think they do this weekend. The Sabres will have their first back-to-back in a long time. They've not had a back-to-back since January 23rd and 24th. And Levi did play the second of those 2 games. That was over a month ago. And since, Levi's been crushing it in Rochester, Luukkonen's been crushing it in Buffalo. The 2 goalies are doing as well as you could hope in the last month, given where they're playing. So we'll see. I might want to guess Levi gets one of the 2 on the weekend, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The news of the day. The Sabres announced something that we had heard about. We had seen reported by Tim Graham of The Athletic back in the summer, but now we got it official. A new roof and a new scoreboard for the Sabres. That investment coming from Terry Pegula, as ownership is on the hook for 100% of renovations at the Sabres arena. That's the lease that they signed way back when. So Pegula putting his own money into the arena, building a new roof, building a new scoreboard. A lot of, well, what about the seats? What about the concourse? There are other things that it sounds like they are going to tackle next, but they can't do it all in one off season. So what it sounds like to me is this off season, they're going to do the roof, which is maybe priority one because it's the infrastructure of the building itself. They're going to go after the scoreboard because that's very outdated. And then I'm hoping that the next off season, it's going to be a little bit of the concourse. It's going to be the seats. They already did the food a little bit last offseason. So all that ahead, but this is good news. The scoreboard will be more, I think, visible to fans. I mean, the roof's going to be visible, but the scoreboard will look more like the one you've seen in Toronto. It's not going to be this mega scoreboard jumbotron like they have in Tampa that stretches for like the whole ice and looks like just 4 monster flat screen TVs. It is going to be more of the square shape, but it looks like it's LED all the way around. And something that I will appreciate, and I know some fans that sit a little bit down low will appreciate often, is they're going to put TV screens, the big screens, under the jumbotron, pointing down, angled down at the fans that are sitting really low. So it's not like if you want to see the replay, you got to stare straight up like you're in the front row of a movie theater. So scoreboard's going to be nice. It's not going to be the best in hockey, but it's going to be severely updated based on where they're at right now. I saw one texter text in a funny comment that this team basically went the entirety of that jumbotron's history without making the playoffs. I think it was only 1 or 2 times that they made the playoffs with that jumbotron, which is pretty incredible. The roof, I don't know that you'll probably notice a difference. I mean, I don't know what color it's going to be on the inside. I don't know if it's going to be lower. I think it might be a good idea to lower the ceiling so that it gets more, it'll push the sound down. And also it might feel a little bit more, I don't know, like that Madison Square Garden-esque feel. I mean, you're not going to get that, but maybe some version of that. I don't know that they plan on doing anything different there. We didn't see any details on the difference of the roof, but this might be an opportunity for them to change that up a little bit if they want. The other thing that was sent out in this release, there was a letter, there was the announcements and a letter sent to fans, season ticket holders, by Terry Pegula and Kevin Adams, expressing their disappointment with the season. It's not where they wanted to be, yada, yada, yada. In that, they announced the scoreboard, they announced the new roof, and they said that the Sabres will be involved. Buffalo will be involved. Not Buffalo. I think he said the Sabres organization will be involved in a NHL tentpole event that will be announced in the coming weeks. What could that mean? NHL tentpole event. Because what I've seen for years is that Buffalo doesn't have the hotel space, and the recent track record of the All-Star game is that to get players to go more, they want it in either big cities or warm weather climates. So I doubt that it's going to be the All-Star game, personally. It probably won't be the draft. I guess it could be, again, the draft what took place in Buffalo in 2016, so 8 years ago. I guess they could send it back here. The only thing, though, is it's already going to be at the Sphere in 2024. And I haven't seen listed anywhere 2025. I guess that's what they could announce, the 2025 draft. But I doubt that, too, because they've done the draft, and they've done it recently. Other tentpole events. Stadium series? I don't think that's it, because my guess is they're waiting for the new Bill Stadium to become available and open, and then they'll do the Winter Classic or a Stadium Series at the new Bill Stadium. So I don't think it's that either. Well, what's left? Tentpole event. Here's my best guess. My guess is that in future weeks, they're going to announce Buffalo as one of the host cities of the Four Nations face-off that the NHL is holding next spring. Now, the one thing, now, it doesn't sound like it would be the actual tournament, though, which I think kind of stinks. And I'm only guessing at that because it was reported a couple of weeks ago that the two cities that would play host to the NHL Four Nations face-off, which is next year's tournament between Team USA, Team Canada, Finland, and Sweden. It was reported it would be Montreal and Boston. But when the NHL unveiled the official announcement of the tournament, there was no mention of Montreal or Boston. All it said was that there would be two North American cities, one in Canada, one in the United States. So maybe there is still a chance that one of those could be Buffalo instead of Boston. I love that idea because I think you could put USA versus Canada in Buffalo and you could get the best possible atmosphere imaginable where you could have a portion of the crowd be Team US fans and a portion of the crowd be Canadian fans. I experienced this when I went to the outdoor World Junior game at then Ralph Wilson Stadium. Or maybe it was New Era Field then. And it was probably like 70-30 Canadian fans to American fans. But having both there was really cool. And I think that would be a really cool element for this. So they'd have to go back on that report for Boston. My other guess is maybe it would be like a pre-tournament game between Team USA and somebody else. I don't know if they're going to do pre-tournament games. I might guess that they do because they typically do with international tournaments. So I don't know. I'm kind of want to believe it has something to do with international hockey. Also because I don't know what else it could be. I don't think it's draft. I don't think it's all-star game. I don't think it's stadium series. The other thing is global series. But wouldn't that be weird in like an NHL, in an arena press release? Hey, here's this press release about the arena. And oh, by the way, two of our games are not going to even be at the arena. They're going to be off in Germany. I guess maybe that could be it too, but it would be weird to me if that was the part of the press release. Either way, just doing the best we can to guess here. I'm hoping and praying that that report about Boston is wrong and that USA versus Canada will be in Buffalo because that would be awesome. Although fans would have a dilemma on their hands because Sabre fans would have to decide whether or not they want to boo or cheer Jack Eichel if he scored a game-winning goal for Team USA. So just mentally prepare for that if we get the game. One other news item to get to before we get to Sabres and Hurricanes. The injury to Jeff Skinner that happened at practice on Monday morning. Don't know the severity of it. He's getting imaging. One sign that it might not be great is that they've already recalled Tyson Jost from Rochester to go on the trip to Florida with them. Don't know if Skinner's on the trip or not. We'll see. Probably won't get an update until they at least land in Florida and maybe after the fact. It's worth noting, Skinner's approaching his 1,000th game. And by the current math, if he were to miss more than 6 games, his 1,000th game would come next season. And if he misses less than 6 games, his 1,000th game will come at the end of this season. So we'll see what we get. Timeout here. Sabres beat the Hurricanes. We'll talk about it when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Camino Consulting. You've heard of our online families and couples course and take advantage of the Locked On 25% discount running to the end of the month. But what about the live seminars? In both sport and business, the challenge in differentiating candidates and recruits is an endless battle. Everyone can demonstrate their measurables and qualifications, but we all know it is the intangibles that matter when those things are similar. Contact Camino Consulting for their team and management seminars to get a peek behind the curtain and watch your next recruiting class or hiring group become one of the most effective you've ever seen, both because you identified the right candidates and because you've learned how to communicate and motivate them in accord with their own preferences. But you aren't in business management or working with a team? We pay referrals. Make some money making your workplace and favorite teams better. Every group together works together better at the end of the year one and year one. So contact Camino Consulting at caminoconsulting.ca and get on the fast track to understanding. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. The Sabres win 3-2 over the Carolina Hurricanes. The Canes. The Canes are from Carolina, obviously. A shootout win. How about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen? The guy's learned everything over the offseason. He's been awesome. The Sabres I saw have the fewest goals allowed since January 1st, and that's thanks in large part to UPL. The one thing he was horrible at in the past that I thought he might never learn is shootouts. And here he is in this shootout. The Hurricanes go 0 for 4. One of those did miss, but part of that is maybe Luukkonen positionally too, taking less away, whatever. Luukkonen did great throughout the game. 30 saves on 32 shots. It's another strong performance from UPL. If they want to make any sort of run, he's going to need to keep playing like this, but he has been playing like this. So super impressed by him. The Sabres in this game. So I actually thought they played really well. I didn't think it was going to happen, though. At the beginning of the game, it's Carolina. It's a team that has dominated the Sabres. It's one of the best possession teams in hockey, one of the most consistent teams in the league for 5 years running. And there they are, 2:40 into the game, scoring a tic-tac-toe goal by Anthony DeAngelo that slides under Luukkonen, which is a save he probably should have made, even though it was a great scoring chance. And it's, oh, here we go. 1-0 already. This game's going to get out of hand. The Boo Birds are going to be out. And from really that moment on, I thought the Sabres hung in there and played stride for stride with Carolina from minute 3 of the game to minute 65 of the game. And they got on the scoreboard the couple of times they needed to. Defensively, I thought they were even really strong at limiting Carolina's chances. They were getting some of their own. Skinner scores in this game on the power play. Some nice movement. The Sabres power play has been a little bit better in the last couple of weeks. So Skinner got his 19th against his former team. He scored a couple of goals recently. That Montreal game got him going. Martin Necas on the power play himself with about 5 minutes to go. So this is where I think Sabre fans thought, oh, here we go. Dahlin crashes the net like you'd want every player to do. Go hard to the net, take the puck to the front, be willing to take a hit, and try to create a goal. Well, here's Dahlin doing that, driving to the net like a power forward and trying to create a goal. He gets shoved a little bit from behind, and he goes into the Carolina goaltender, Spencer Martin, in this game. He gets a penalty, Dahlin, and I didn't like that at all. I thought that there should have probably been no call because both guys had some responsibility. Maybe you even call them both there. Either way, should not have been a Carolina power play with 5 minutes to go. The crowd's after the refs, and pretty early on in that power play, Carolina scores to make it 2-1. And you might have expected the Sabres were just going to fold there. And there's my guy, Peyton Krebs, ready to make a play. He goes in, he gets the puck behind the net with it's only a minute after the Necas goal. And he holds, he waits for guys to drop down. He finds an open Owen Power, puts it right in his wheelhouse, and Power, in his first game back from injury, puts it past Martin on the blocker side to tie the game at 2. And Krebs in that line have, to me, been the biggest difference in this team in the last week. That's a real, legitimate third line that is playing, I think, better than any Sabres third line of the season. If you look at, there was the game the other night where they're their best line. Here's another one where they're on the ice for 11 minutes of 5-on-5 time. They had 17 shot attempts. The opponent had 10. They had expected goals, 53%. They had 7 scoring chances to the opponent's 3 in this one. High danger, it was 2-1. They outplayed their opponent every stretch of the way. They had the best numbers top to bottom of all those Sabres. And when I'm watching them, it's the speed, but it's that all 3 just kind of have this way of playing off one another. They're always moving their feet. And that's Krebs and Peterka are very active players. I kind of like the combo. Those two are active and are very quick. They are agile. Benson, I feel like, has still got a ways to go with his skating, but Benson plays angles well. And Benson uses space well. So when you get two quick guys, all three know how to pass really well, and that is a big key here, is all three are great passers. And it's rare to me when you watch them, they're putting one in the skates. It's easier to lose the puck. It's easier to turn it over when you throw a pass in a guy's skates and now he's got to stop, he's got to corral it, and then he's got to look up. And by that time, because the NHL is so fast, the guy's already taken it from you, or he's hit you, or he's put you in a spot where you're about to turn it over. These guys are efficient. These guys put it on the tape. They know where each other are going. I think you keep rolling with it. They didn't look great, I think, in the first game of that they played together. But in the couple since, I think they have been the Sabres' best line. And I would hope that they keep that line together. And maybe it could even be a line for the future, right? Krebs could kind of help push Middlestad out the door. Because if you've got Thompson up top in line center one, you've got Cousins as center two, and if Krebs continues to show, I got the third spot. I should have never been a fourth line center. I'm good as a third line center. If that's the case, Middlestad is still very good on the wing, but you don't value him as much because you don't need him to play center for you. And there are other teams out there that will value him as a top six centerman. And that's where you would want to cash in if Krebs continues to show, I got this. You don't even need Kulik, who's going to show up at some point. You don't even need Savoy. I got this to be your third line center on this young line. Maybe I went too far on Twitter comparing them to Roy, Vanek, and Afinogenov, but I see comparables in all three. Peterka's got a lot of Afinogenov in him. It's up and down the ice, tons of speed, tons of chances. Roy to Krebs, little Roy was this more so at the beginning. Little bit of a scrappy player, a good two-way centerman, but also really small, but kind of plays above his weight a little bit, and a good playmaker. Roy to Krebs, right? That's a good one. And then you've got Benson to Vanek. I mean, Benson's got a long ways to go, but, I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that. He's got a long ways to go to be the Vanek part of that. But I think that line has, some traits that remind me of that amazing kid line from 0607. So, by the way, expected goals for percentage on the season for all of these lines. Among lines that have played a significant amount together, it's like one of their best three lines on the season. In fact, actually, of lines that have played 30 minutes or more together, a 5-on-5 ice time, they're the best line of the season. The Sabres expected goals for, they have not had a better line all year than Krebs, Benson, and Peterka. When we come back, Pat Kane. Should we be doing any looking back at that after the run he's had here with Detroit? We'll talk about it next here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Sleeper. Nearing the end point of that, of the regular season, and things are not going too hot. But regardless of where the Sabres are at in the standings, want to remind you, you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper, our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you got to do, pick whether different players. You can pick Sabres. You can look at a Casey Middlestad. You can look at a JJ Peterka, Tage Thompson, many more. Whether they'll record more or less in their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, or more in a given game. And to win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8-player stats. You heard me, Sabre fans, you can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention, nail your picks so you can start winning big. And when you do, use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You're going to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Final segment here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Let's play the what-if game. Why not? What if the Sabres had signed Patrick Kane? And the reason we are playing this game today is because Kane went back to Chicago, scored in overtime. Great moment. It was the moment of the league that on Monday night or Sunday night. Kane now this season, after months and months of almost everybody, most, including myself, at least questioning, if not doubting, whether he could ever get back to 80% of the player that he used to be. So just to hit the rewind button for a moment, to rewind back to September or October when we would have talked about this, my reasoning for saying no to Patrick Kane would have been, and by the way, I'm not the Sabres. The Sabres wanted Kane. The reason I said no was two things. One, hip injury that nobody's come back from. The sample, the history of that hip injury and surgery that Kane had says you're never getting back to playing at the same level, and you're probably not playing at all because guys like Ed Jovanovski, Ryan Kessler, Nicholas Backstrom, if Backstrom is indeed done, which it sounds like he is, all three of those guys and others have had their careers ended by that injury and that surgery. All three tried to come back and play. None of the three were able to do it. Backstrom, again, started the season, couldn't do it. Two, if Kane was going to be useful, the thing you could trust the most to be useful was the power play. And give me a little bit of slack. At the time, right at the beginning of the season, I don't think we had the worries with the power play that we certainly do now. I mean, hindsight's 2020. Yeah, Kane would have helped them, especially because their power play has took a big dump, you know? Kane, though, as a power play specialist, I mean, they're third from the bottom. Would Kane have had them in the top 5? Probably not that much of an impact. But could he have gotten them to the middle of the pack? What about even 20th instead of 28th? How about just a little bit more on the power play this season? That alone would have been useful from Patrick Kane. He's got 28 points in 27 games. He is scoring goals. He is at a 14% shooting percentage. That is the highest of his career since 2016, highest in 7 years, is really the way I should have put that. He's playing 18 minutes a night, so he's playing a solid amount of minutes. Not the 22 he once played in Chicago, but a good amount. And Detroit's winning. They are 5th. They won 5 straight games. And if you look at how they're winning, they're getting saves, a little bit unsustainable, but for now they're getting saves. Alex Lyon is playing a lot. And they're scoring on the power play. And Kane's not all that. Kane's actually been a good 5-on-5 player, too. I don't want to make it sound like he's a one-dimensional player. That's what we thought he would be. He's giving that power play production, and he's helping out 5-on-5 on top of that. So, yeah, looking back, he would have helped the Sabres this year. He definitely would have. I'll eat crow on that. I doubted that he could come back from that injury, but he has. And good for him. He is on a line that is really helping him with Dylan Larkin and Alex DeBrincat. He wanted to play with DeBrincat, so the Sabres never had that in the first place. And let's be real. Like I saw one comment yesterday, which is understandable, that we should despise him because he's from Buffalo and he chose against the Sabres. Timing hurt the Sabres here. Maybe if the injury hadn't been as long-term for Kane, or if he had started the process, if he had got surgery at the deadline last year instead of after the season, and he's ready for the beginning of the year, maybe he's a Buffalo Sabre all year long. But he got to see a month of the year. Pat Kane got to see 1 month of hockey before making his decision. And how can you blame Patrick Kane for watching the first month of the Sabre season and going, yeah, I don't think so. I'm not really confident this is going to work. How could you blame him? It didn't look good. And for a team that's been so poor for 13 years, I would understand why he wouldn't think that this was going to happen here. Detroit played better the first month of the year, and they've maintained that. He's helped it along. So where would he have played even? That's another good question that you could ask yourself. I'm thinking maybe like Cousins and Peterka. He could have filled in for Jack Quinn all season. Again, it's not the Sabres' fault. They tried to sign him. But They needed to have a better first month, and maybe they would have been able to pull it off. And he probably would be helping them a lot right now. Would he get them in the playoffs? Probably not, but they might actually be in the race. Who knows? All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We'll keep you updated on whatever this tentpole event is that the Sabres got going on. Be sure to make Locked On Sports Today your next listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the first ever 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's now available as well on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Next up, Sabres at Panthers in Florida. We'll talk about it next time here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Join our group chat. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.